All right, welcome everybody to our very first episode of environmental science graduate students at UC Riverside. We're talking here about our research and life as graduate students in our department. Today we have our guest, Samiksha Singh. She goes by Sam, and I'm the host, Wynn Cowger. Sam's going to talk with us today about her experience switching from professional consulting in South Africa to academia in the United States. And so with no further ado, I'll kind of introduce Sam. Sam's a PhD student in Andrew Gray's lab at UC Riverside. And full disclosure, I am too. So we're lab partners. And this is, we're super excited to do our first ever episode of this together. We're trying to improve the connectivity between the graduate students in our department and really get to know each other as COVID's going on and keeping us apart. But with this, maybe we'll be able to still grow closer together by sharing our experiences with one another. So we're super happy to be doing this, and
I'm super excited to be here.
Future episodes as well. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Cool. So I don't know if there's anything. Maybe we could just start off with you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your research.
Okay, sure, no problem. And as I said, thanks for having me on the first episode of the podcast. I'm really excited for it, actually. So as Wynn said, we lab mates, but just a little bit about myself before I came here. I came here last year in 2019 to do a PhD in the Gray lab, as Wynn said. But before that, I was back home in South Africa, where I was doing environmental consulting. So before I moved here, I had gone to school in the same city. I had gone to university in the same city that I was born in. I worked in the same city that I was born in. And then one day at our job, we had somebody from the American embassy come talk to us about scholarship opportunities to study in the United States. So I just tried applying for one, and here I am now, a year later. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it seems like it's been a really big shift for you to go from being in one city for your whole life and now coming to the other side of the world and being in a entirely different environment around new people and everything like that. How's your transition been coming out here? How things how was it? What was like? Did you have a big culture shock when you came out here? Were there like, was there anything that was really shocking and new in the United States, or were things pretty similar to how they are in South Africa?
So in terms of like the city and day-to-day life, it's pretty similar to what I'm used to, except so I didn't have a car when I came here. That was the one thing that was different, because back home, a lot of people have cars, and that's their main mode of transport. So that was one thing that was really different. And the second real big culture shock for me was the food at grocery stores. In terms of having to always read the ingredients to see like what stuff's in there, like how much sugar, how much high fructose corn syrup there is, things like that, because we don't really have that stuff in our food, so we never have to pay attention on it. And also the one thing that was like real culture shock for me was in the grocery store, like fruit and veg here is more expensive than like boxed meals, like those that you put in the microwave, like those quick meals. But back home, it's the other way around. Like those meals are really expensive, and only if you like at a certain level of income can you afford those kind of meals. Whereas everyone can afford fruit and veg because that's made available for everyone. So that was one of the biggest things. And one of the most difficult things I think for me was just trying to do everyday activities like find a grocery store, and once you get there, decide which brands of stuff you like. Because the first, I think, 6 months, I just spent buying different brands of things and trying to figure out which was the best one for me. I think that was one of the biggest culture shocks for me.
I'm really curious, are there any, like, I know in a lot of countries there's a lot more vegetarian options than here in the United States. And I wonder if there's any like vegetarian dishes or meals that you could get in South Africa that you can't get here in the US.
So the one thing I notice about fruit and veg, for example, is just the one thing that keeps coming to mind is butternuts and pumpkins. Like here, it's only available now in fall as a decorative item, whereas back home in African, like traditional African cuisine, butternut's one of the staple vegetables in the diet. So it's available all year round, and there's tons of dishes that use it. Whereas here, it's so hard to just find a butternut to eat. It's more like this matches with this decor,
Right.
matches with this decor. Yeah, that's the one vegetable is
Yeah.
like really weird to me.
Yeah, right on. So let's jump into your research here at UCR. And what are you studying for your dissertation?
So we both are studying microplastics in river systems, so their fate and transport. I've just started, so I'm still finding my feet around the topic. But right now, my main focus is on developing methods of microplastic extraction from water samples that we collect in the field. I just feel like because in this field, like there's no real standardized method. I feel like it's really important that we find something that works for us, because if we can't extract the microplastics from the samples we collect, we can't do any of the other analysis. So I think it's step one and an important step to moving forward with the research.
Has COVID presented any barriers to your research project progress here?
Yeah, I think so. I think first we couldn't go to the field as often as we would have liked, especially at the start of COVID, which was the wet season. We had to miss a lot of that sampling because of lockdown, and because the sampling requires us to be in such close proximity with each other. It was obviously not possible to get that done. And for a few months, we weren't allowed on campus, so we couldn't go to our labs either. So that also kind of hindered some research progress. But now I think it's okay because we have access to the lab. But one of the sad, unfortunate things is that the undergrads that usually help us aren't able to be there. So firstly, we're having to do a lot of things by ourselves, which is time consuming. And also we can't share the knowledge and like bounce ideas off each other, things like that. So that's the one thing about COVID and being like socially distant from people, is especially with lab work or with research, it's so important to bounce ideas off people, get other people's opinions and perspectives. And often that's not easy on Zoom, or when two people are not in the lab at the same time doing it. So yeah, we really take those kind of human interactions for granted. So I think those are the things that COVID has really impacted.
Yeah, those are such good points that you touch on. I totally resonate with all of those, especially undergraduates. I just feel like so bad that they are going to be missing out on a lot of research opportunities that used to be very plentiful here at UCR, but because undergraduates are not allowed to work in the lab with us currently due to COVID, it's just like such a missed opportunity. Hopefully, I know we've been reaching out We have Hina Nogi and Hannah and Naman and several other undergraduates that are working with us now, but mostly working kind of remotely on the computer and everything. So it's just kind of a different experience. Yeah.
And I just feel like when you're working closely with other people and even your undergrad, you develop this kind of connection that it actually helps you work faster with your research because you've broken all those barriers, because now you actually you know each other, so you can work well with each other. So yeah, hopefully one day.
Yeah, I know for me too, it's been like because and with you also, like, we're fully funded, so we're not doing any TAing, and so like working with undergraduates is how we are learning how to teach also. And I think that that's such like a an experience that helps us to learn more about what we're doing by teaching it, and by teaching that hands-on. I think it's a lot more effective and really drives home the lessons for myself when I'm trying to teach things too. So I don't know if you've experienced this kind of just a similar thing with you or not.
Exactly. Yeah. When you're speaking to somebody or trying to teach somebody, you actually learning yourself, because I mean it's the only way to solidify what you've learned by teaching other people. And I think that aspect's really important, and it's something we're missing right now.
Yeah.
And also the other thing with COVID is I was thinking about it the other day. Like we used to all sit in an office together. So if I had something that I didn't understand, I would just like turn to you and say, "Hey, can you help me?" And it would take like 5 seconds. Now, when you get to that problem, you're like, "Okay, let me gather all my issues and just do an email, like a one email," because like emailing somebody every few hours is annoying, and also like also like you need to also try to figure it out yourself. But yeah, I think that's the other thing that we took for granted, like sharing an office space with other people, and not just people from our lab, even from other labs, because just sitting in the office, people talking about their research, you just learn so much just by listening to other people. So that's the other thing.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't even think about that, but that puts a lot of perspective on like why emails from most people, and the emails that I'm sending these days are like exactly what you're saying. They're just like really long, like lots of bullets, because we just want to get like everything succinct, send it over. Whereas before, if I had a question for Andy, I'd just like pop into his office. Now it's like I, kind of save those up and like send them all together. Yeah. I feel like initially when that started, I was getting kind of overwhelmed by it. Like, oh my gosh, every single message is like so packed full of so many things. But yeah, that's a good way to kind of see it.
And also you're trying to make the whole email correspondence efficient and effective. So you're like, okay, maybe if I just send one, the person can think about all these things at the same time. I don't know. I guess we kind of used to these kind
of emails. Another thing I really wanted to talk about today is what life is like being a foreign student at UCR. Something I don't have any perspective on, and I'm sure, but like most of the graduate students in our department are foreign students, and I think it'd be great for us to have a discussion about what that life is like.
Well, for me, it was really eye-opening. I think that's the word, because I ended up meeting people from basically all over the world, and everyone has their own perspectives and ideas and thoughts. But the really nice thing about our year was that more than half, almost 70% of everyone in my class, in my cohort, were foreign students. So even though we came from different places, we had that one thing in common. And it's weird that even with that, just that one thing, you can find similarities with other people from other places. And I think that's what made the transition much easier, because most of the people in my class were experiencing the same thing that I was experiencing. Whereas if you are the only foreign student in a class, it's more difficult. But for us, it was more easy to adjust, because all of us were in the same boat at the same time, experiencing the same things, even though we were from different countries. It was crazy, but that's what made the transition of the people in my year much easier. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that you just like ignited a memory in my mind, actually. I guess I have had a little bit of the taste of that when I went to India for my first time, and I was out in the Himalaya mountains, and I ran into all of these other foreigners that were also exploring out there and touring. And I remember like a really similar experience where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed with all these things that are going on. But like, thank God there's like 10 other people here who are also feeling the same exact way. Exactly. And we can like get a beer with each other afterward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that you have to do as a foreign student, like get a social security number and like register on these databases and like get a license, whatever. The domestic students have never really had to, they don't even know like the process. So even if they want to help you, they can't, because they just don't know. But other foreign students have had to do that. So they know exactly, like, go to this office, go at this time, take this with you.
Right.
And all of that stuff makes it really easy. And the UCR also has pretty good resources for international students about like what documents you need, where you need to go, what you need to get. So that helps, but also having people that you can interact with every day who have to do the exact same things as you really make the transition easy.
Right. Yeah. So how do you, at UCR, how do foreign students, like if they happen to be in a cohort that doesn't have a lot of other foreign students, like what are the groups that you get plugged in with on campus?
Yeah, so there's an international students office, and that's like the main place you go for all your needs, really, especially for administration needs, because there's so many administration needs. And then there's also a lot of clubs like Africa Students Club, Indian Student Association, all of that stuff, Middle Eastern Club, things like that. So a lot of the times people who come here already know other people who've come from their countries before, and they know these clubs, so they usually get involved in those. So the international student office is really good for all your administration and academic needs, and then all these other clubs are really good for like your social needs.
Okay.
So at UCR, there are good resources, and oftentimes I've noticed that the international students that come from places where there are a lot of international students from that place already here, so they very easily find the groups that they need to belong to or want to belong to.
Yeah, that's. I remember when you came here, you. We went to the India Sweets and Spices. That was like the big thing for you for a while, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
oh, Indian food, it's so close by. Yeah.
Yeah, that place is awesome. Shout out to India Sweets and Spices. You come to UCR, you gotta go there. There's two of them. They're on the same street. It's confusing, but both are good.
Yeah, I don't think you'd make a mistake with either one.
Another thing we wanted to talk about. We have so much that we wanted to talk about in this. But another thing that I totally forgot about until now is the professional consulting that you were doing in South Africa. compare in that transition from going to professional consulting and now being in academia. What was, I guess maybe we could start out with what your work was like in South Africa, and then kind of like making a comparison to similarities and differences to your work here at UCR.
Yeah, so back home, I worked at a company called the Institute of Natural Resources, and it was a non-profit company, and it was a mix of research and environmental consulting. So how the company worked was that we would get funding by writing proposals and sending them out to like government agencies for work that they needed, so like a tender process, or we would get private clients who needed us to do specific environmental stuff. So when I worked there, I worked in the ecosystems theme. So there were a number of different themes like rural development and agriculture. There was a hydrology team. There was a adaptation and resilience team. So I worked in the ecosystems theme, and some of my work included doing like aquatic biomonitoring at like newly developed sites, or pump storage schemes for electricity. And then I also worked in like the environmental management theme, where we would do like environmental impact assessments for developments like forestry, or for like in the city that I was living in, they were doing an airport expansion. So we were doing a whole environmental impact assessment for the expansion of the airport. That was one of the projects I worked on. And then I also worked in one more theme, was the adaptation and resilience. And in that theme, we would go into like rural village areas and do social impact assessments and teach them about wetland conservation, and do social impact assessments on like providing solar panels to these communities, things like that, resources that they didn't have. I really enjoyed my job, and we did a lot of different projects, and it was never the same thing every day. So it was really interesting. And so I would work with like government doing like environmental impact assessments, and I'd work with communities doing like these social assessments. Then I also get out in the field and do like water quality sampling. So it was such a variety of things, and with that you learn so much because you're working in so many different fields at the same time. And then I knew that eventually, after I had worked there for a few years, around 4 years, I knew that I wanted to do a PhD. So actually my first option was doing it through the company. So doing a project that I could convert to my PhD. So do all the research for the project as a company project, and then get the PhD from that. And then, as I said, it so happened the lady came to speak to us, and then all my plans were changed after that. So
yeah.
But I'm really happy with the decision I made, because even though the academic world's totally different from the working world, there are some similarities, especially because I was working at a half research company, so we'd had that element of research. But also, like, the project I'm working on has so many different government entities and agencies also involved. The setup of this project that I'm working on is pretty much the setup of how we were working on projects back home. So a management element, and then different companies or spheres doing different tasks, and then bringing it all together. So that's one of the major similarities, I think, which probably isn't always the case with everyone in academia. Just so happened that the project I'm working on is structured that way.
That makes a lot of sense why you hit the ground running here so fast, especially with such a diverse and complicated topic that you're studying, microplastics, and simultaneously, leading the field on this like complicated pollutant. While you have to manage like many different interested policymakers and managers and decision makers and other scientists who are all collaborating with you. Yeah. Wow.
No, I was saying collaboration in the working world is quite a big deal. Like it's important and it has to be done. So that aspect is really nice to bring that aspect to academics, which might not always be the case, but I think it's really important. And I like that part of it. Like I like listening to other people and learning their perspectives and seeing how they do things. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of our work too. I really love that. So let's see. There's only a couple more topics I wanted to hit on before I know we have a time limit for our Zoom
Yeah.
call, but we'll definitely want to touch base again
Yeah,
at
for
some
sure.
point. And so anyways, I think we have about 10 more minutes and a couple more questions to get to. So one other thing is a little more heated of a topic. I know the federal government has initiated several different changes to visa status, and I'm just wondering if that in any way has impacted your research or your personal life.
Yeah, I think it definitely has. Just in a general sense, I think for every international student here, these changes or proposed changes do impact you in some way or the other. Even sometimes you don't even realize it, but it does. Like it's always at the back of your mind. Oh, it could change at this time, or it could just change when you least expect it. So, I mean, the first change during the start of COVID about something about if you're taking only online courses, you shouldn't be here. That did not affect me because of the visa that I had, but it affected so many international students for such a stressful time. And just by default, like you also feel kind of stressed and a little anxious that, oh, maybe we're not that welcome here at that time, But after that was fine. And then recently there's some other proposed changes, which I highly doubt that they'll go through. But I know, like personally, besides it being COVID and borders being closed and all of that stuff, I wouldn't feel comfortable to go visit home right now because of all these changes that keep happening. Because you never know when a new change is going to happen, and if you're going to be stuck out of the country, you won't be allowed in. So yeah, so on that personal level for me, I know that I wouldn't be able to go home right now because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really hard. I'm sorry that that's happening. It's totally unfair. And I'm really hoping for the best. I keep refreshing my screen. It's election. It's a couple days after election day, but we still don't know what's going to happen yet.
I think everyone's refreshing their screen.
This is a good distraction from that. I'm glad we're not talking about that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I guess another thing, I mean, like, how's your family doing with everything? I'm sure they miss you. And how do you stay in contact with them? Like, how do you keep your connection to them when you're on the other side of the world?
Yeah. I guess the good thing was we kind of knew why we couldn't see each other, or I couldn't go to visit because of COVID, and every single person in the world was struggling with the same thing. I mean, every single person has been affected by it. So that was one consolation. Like even if I wanted to go, I couldn't go, but to stay in contact, I mean, FaceTiming or WhatsApp video calling, that really helps. And then yeah, so I mean, with technology, it makes it so much easier to keep in contact with people around the world. So I think that's one thing we have going for us. I couldn't imagine how people like 10, 20 years ago managed to keep in contact. But honestly, with technology, it's pretty easy. Just like the time difference, you have to just work around that. But once you know the good time to call or to then it's cool. And then like with friends back home, we always have like group video calls, like we schedule group video calls, and we do like online kind of games and whatever. So I mean, there's lots of ways to stay in contact. And also the crazy thing was none of the people back home could see each other either. So it was as if we were all miles and thousands of miles apart, you know, because everyone, so it was as if I could have been like just in the next city across, because everyone was in that situation.
People aren't leaving their houses very much in South Africa right now.
So at the start around April, there was a full lockdown for 4 weeks. You couldn't leave your house at all. Not even the first 2 weeks, not even to exercise out of your yard. And the only stores that were open were grocery stores. There were no clothing shops open or anything of that sort. There was no alcohol sold, no cigarettes, none of that stuff was sold. And mainly to free up the emergency rooms, because with alcohol, you know, there are a lot of unnecessary disasters that happen. So it was mainly to free up the emergency rooms. And there was also no intercity travel. And that was mainly because they wanted to keep the more rural village areas free from COVID, because the hospital facilities in those areas are pretty poor. So back home, most of the young people work in the cities, and then they go home to like their family village homes during weekends or holidays, like taking like groceries and goods with them. So when they limited that kind of travel, the people in cities couldn't carry the virus home, because it was mainly people in cities that were getting it, because there were more people, there's airports. That's how the virus first came into the country anyway. So with that, most of the rural communities stayed free from COVID. And also the lockdown had to happen because in our cities there are a lot of squatter camp areas where people live really close without many facilities like running water, electricity, all of that stuff. Also not good sanitation and things like that. So it during that lockdown, it was to ensure that none of this was happening. And like there was also no fast food, all restaurants were closed, even drive-through, even delivery service. And that was mainly because most people are reliant on public transport, so the workers would be exposing themselves on their way to work in close, cramped quarters in vehicles. So for 4 weeks, there was that really strict lockdown, and it seemed to help. But obviously, because of the economy and things like that, it has to open after a while. But back home, masks are mandatory. You get fined if you're not wearing a mask. Stores are only open for certain periods of time. The alcohol ban was in place for quite a few months, actually. And there's always like sanitizing before you enter a shop, when you leave the shop, things like that. So, and or like movies, all of that stuff remained closed for quite a long time.
Is there any chance that your family can come visit you here while you're here? Or is that kind of a no-go?
The South African borders only opened around 2 weeks ago. And there's a list of countries that are not allowed in, and you're not allowed to visit those countries. And the United States has one of the highest cases, so we definitely not allowed.
Obviously, yeah. I don't even. That makes a lot of sense.
So I don't know. Right now, no.
Yeah.
One day when the numbers come down here, then.
Yeah. I hope it's soon. We'll keep wearing our masks.
Yes, wear your mask.
So what have you been doing for fun out here in Riverside during COVID? Have you been finding anything to pass the time and have fun doing?
I have a lot of fun with like. Honestly, though, to be honest, I've been working in the lab so much during this time. Because that was one of the things I could do, and I spend most of my time there, which actually it was a good thing because I really got like a good handle on my research and the things that I needed to do. So I guess that was one of the pros about this whole situation, because it forced me to do that, because that was the only thing to do, like in terms of campus stuff. So I spend a lot of my time in the lab, a lot of it. So
Yeah.
and I know that doesn't sound like fun, but for me it really helped me get a good handle on my research, and really helped me get more familiar with my topic, which I wasn't when I first arrived. So I'm really glad that I had that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I have a lot of fun doing work too, to be honest. So
Yeah.
in some ways it's not too bad that I'm just like trapped to my desk
Exactly.
working nonstop. But in other ways, I do like to get outside sometimes
And then for real, like proper fun,
Yeah.
like what other people call fun. I've done like a few hiking trails with some people. I've been to the beach a few times.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I mean, with outdoor activities, I think it's possible to do. So
Yeah.
it's always good. It's always good to go outside, even just for a few minutes every day. I think it's so important. So
Yeah, that's so true. I've been I've been going climbing, going hiking. It's gonna snow soon. Can you believe it? Snow in Southern California. We're
I
gonna have
can't
snow on
believe
the
it.
mountains,
Wow.
and then we can go have snowball fights and stuff.
More snowball fights.
Yeah, do some winter hiking. Lots of good stuff. I got snowshoes now.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to go rock climbing sometime?
I still need to get my climbing shoes. Man, I was gonna be so good at it if COVID didn't happen.
You still got a chance. Don't worry. We got climbing shoes for you. We'll let you use ours.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm gonna be so good at climbing.
I think you will be really good once you take it up.
Yeah, I need to actually take it up seriously and then practice and then make
Yeah.
these claims.
You will be. You're gonna be pro.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thanks a lot for joining me on this. I think this went really well, and I think we've learned a lot about how to set this up. Thanks for setting up the Zoom call. My internet's like on and off these days, so I'm glad that you're hosting it right now. And yeah, I guess I don't really know how to end this. We'll have another one of these in maybe a week or two, and we'll have this posted up on YouTube, and our Twitter handle is UC_science. And please tune in again, comment, and share, join us if you're one of the graduate students in environmental science. Join us next time. We'll talk about your research and your experiences. Reach out to Sam if you're interested in her research. What's your Twitter handle or your
I don't have Twitter,
media?
but I have Instagram. Follow me on Instagram.
Sure.
It's Samiksha_25. You'll find me.
All right.
Yeah, I'm trying to grow my Instagram following.
Sweet. I'm not on Insta, but I'm on Twitter, and my personal Twitter is win_open_data.
Oh. Classic. Thank you for having me, Win. I really had a wonderful time.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.